Ladies and gentlemen, as the night grows quiet and the world around us falls asleep, we step into a sacred battlefield where only God is our defender. At midnight, when shadows whisper and hearts tremble, we lift our voices to the Almighty, declaring His power over every hidden war. Father, as we sleep, let your fire surround our homes. Let your angels stand guard at every door. Every unseen attack is silenced by your mighty hand. Lord, fight for us in the darkness, and let your victory speak while we rest. Midnight is not a moment of fear, but a divine appointment where God fights unseen battles on our behalf. There is something sacred about the hour when the noise of the day fades and the world lies still. It is in that deep silence, when human strength is laid down and our eyes are closed in sleep, that the presence of God moves in ways we cannot see. Many tremble at midnight because darkness often symbolizes uncertainty. But for those who know the Lord, midnight is not ruled by terror. It is governed by the sovereignty of the Almighty. It is the hour when heaven's armies are dispatched, when divine strategies are released, and when the faithful can rest knowing that God never slumbers nor sleeps. Midnight represents the crossing point between what was and what is about to be. It is a spiritual threshold. In Scripture, chains have fallen at midnight, prison doors have opened, and divine interventions have rewritten stories in a single moment. While the world sees darkness, heaven sees opportunity. While the enemy plots in secrecy, God responds with authority. The battles that rage in the unseen realm do not depend on our physical awareness. They depend on God's supreme power. When we surrender our fears and choose trust over anxiety, we align ourselves with a heavenly reality that is far greater than any hidden opposition. There are battles that cannot be fought with human hands. There are struggles that cannot be solved by conversation, strategy, or effort. These are the unseen battles, conflicts of destiny, purpose, protection, and spiritual inheritance. At midnight, when our natural defenses are lowered, the temptation is to feel vulnerable. Yet this is precisely when divine strength is perfected. God steps into the arena where we cannot stand. He confronts forces we cannot name. He silences accusations we cannot hear. He overturns plans that were formed in darkness. What appears to be a quiet hour is, in truth, a time of intense spiritual activity directed by the King of Heaven. Fear often grows in the dark because the human mind imagines what it cannot see. But faith grows in the same darkness because it trusts the one who sees everything. Midnight becomes a divine appointment when we understand that it is not empty. It is filled with God's watchful presence. The stillness is not abandonment, it is assurance. The silence is not weakness, it is preparation. In that hour, heaven's agenda advances. God, who is light, does not retreat because of darkness. Instead, He demonstrates His authority over it. When we speak of God fighting unseen battles on our behalf, we are acknowledging a profound truth. There are dimensions of life that extend beyond the physical. There are prayers whispered during the day that receive answers in the night. There are tears shed in secret that provoke divine response while we sleep. God's intervention is not limited to daylight. In fact, some of His greatest works occur when human activity is at its lowest. This reveals His independence from our effort and highlights His faithfulness. He does not require our awareness to act. He requires our trust. Midnight is also a test of confidence. Will we surrender to worry, or will we rest in assurance? To declare midnight as a divine appointment is to reject panic and embrace peace. It is to say, even now, God is working. It is to believe that while we are unaware, He is attentive. While we are resting, He is moving. While we are vulnerable, He is vigilant. This transforms the atmosphere of the night from one of dread to one of expectation. The unseen battles God fights may involve protection from harm, preservation of destiny, or dismantling of schemes meant to delay progress. We may never know the accidents prevented, the dangers diverted, or the conflicts resolved before they reached us. Yet faith recognizes that divine intervention is constant. Every sunrise may carry testimonies we did not witness at midnight. Every new day may be evidence of battles already won in silence. In understanding midnight as a divine appointment, we step into deeper reliance on God's character. We acknowledge His omnipotence, His omniscience, and His unwavering commitment to His children. We embrace the reality that darkness cannot intimidate Him, that hidden agendas cannot surprise Him, and that spiritual conflicts cannot overpower Him. Midnight, therefore, is not defined by shadows, but by sovereignty. It is not remembered for fear, but for faith. It stands as a sacred reminder that even when we close our eyes, heaven remains fully awake, and the God who loves us continues to fight on our behalf. As we sleep, the power of the Almighty surrounds us, and every hidden attack is silenced by His authority. Sleep is often seen as a moment of weakness, a time when the body shuts down and awareness fades. But in the economy of God, sleep is not vulnerability, it is trust. When we lie down and close our eyes, we are making a silent declaration that our lives are not sustained by our own vigilance, but by the hand of the one who never sleeps. In that surrender, the power of the Almighty does not withdraw, it intensifies. His presence becomes a shield, encircling us in ways the natural mind cannot measure. The night carries many unseen movements. While the body rests, the spiritual realm remains active. Thoughts, intentions, and plans, both good and evil, do not pause because it is night. Yet above all of this activity stands the supreme authority of God. As His children sleep, He establishes boundaries that cannot be crossed. His power forms a covering that no hidden attack can penetrate. What the enemy plans in secrecy is exposed and dismantled by divine command. What is released in darkness is answered by light that does not need the sun to shine. There are attacks that do not announce themselves. They do not come with warning signs or audible threats. They move quietly, aiming at peace, destiny, health, purpose, and clarity of mind. These are the attacks that thrive in secrecy, but secrecy is never protection from God. The Almighty does not need visibility to exercise authority. His word alone is enough to silence every force that operates in hidden places. As we sleep, His authority speaks. It does not shout, it commands. It does not struggle, it reigns. The surrounding power of God is not distant or symbolic. It is intimate and deliberate. It is like a wall of fire that forms without noise, like a fortress built without human hands. This power does not merely defend, it enforces order. It establishes peace where unrest was intended. It brings calm where fear sought entry. Even dreams fall under His jurisdiction. What could have been polluted is purified. What could have been disturbed is settled. Sleep becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield because God Himself presides over it. To understand that every hidden attack is silenced by His authority is to recognize that God's authority is final. There is no appeal against it. No force can negotiate with it. No darkness can delay it. Authority does not react, it rules. When God speaks, opposition ends, not because of effort, but because of position. His authority flows from who He is, not from what He does. Therefore, even while we are unconscious, His dominion remains fully active. The human tendency is to believe protection requires awareness, that safety demands control. Yet God invites His people into a higher truth. True safety is found in surrender. Sleep becomes an act of faith, a declaration that God is enough even when we are not watching. In that faith, His power responds. The surrounding presence of God is not passive. It is alert. It listens for threats before they form. It intercepts intentions before they manifest. It neutralizes danger before it becomes experience. There is a deep peace that comes from knowing that the Almighty surrounds us. This peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of authority. It settles the heart even when circumstances are uncertain. It quiets the mind even when questions remain unanswered. It assures the soul that nothing is allowed to pass through God's covering without His permission. Hidden attacks lose their strength because they cannot operate outside divine allowance. Night after night, this unseen war continues. As sleep deepens, trust deepens as well. The soul rests not because all battles are visible, but because the one fighting them is faithful. The authority of God does not diminish with time or darkness. It remains constant, absolute, and active. Every hidden attack, regardless of its origin or intention, encounters a boundary it cannot cross. The night becomes a testimony of divine oversight. Rest becomes a partnership with heaven. Silence becomes proof of authority at work. Night prayers activate angelic protection and establish God's dominion over our homes. When the sun sets and the world grows quiet, prayer becomes more than words spoken. It becomes an atmosphere created. Night prayer is not a ritual of fear, but an act of alignment. It aligns the heart with heaven and invites divine order into spaces that would otherwise be vulnerable to confusion and unrest. In the stillness of the night, prayer carries unusual weight because distractions fade and the spirit becomes more attentive to God. What is released in that hour does not end with words. It continues to work long after the voice has gone silent. Angelic protection is not a poetic idea. It is a spiritual reality woven into God's design. Angels are messengers and guardians assigned by God to serve His purposes. When prayer rises at night, it becomes a signal in the spiritual realm. It authorizes movement. It releases assignments. Angels respond not to panic, but to faith expressed through prayer. They do not act independently. They move in obedience to God's command. Night prayers create legal ground for their operation, establishing boundaries around homes, families, and destinies. The home is more than a physical structure. It is a spiritual environment shaped by what is spoken, believed, and practiced within its walls. Night prayer claims that environment for God. It declares that the house belongs to Him, that His atmosphere is under His authority, and that every other influence is subject to His rule. When prayer is made at night, it settles into the foundations of the home. It lingers in the rooms. It covers the sleeping and the waking alike. God's dominion is not symbolic. It is enforced through divine order. Night often magnifies thoughts and emotions. Fears seem louder. Memories feel heavier. Uncertainty presses harder. In this vulnerable hour, prayer becomes a shield for the mind and spirit. As prayer ascends, peace descends. Angels stand watch, not only at doors and windows, but over hearts and minds. They guard thoughts from intrusion and emotions from oppression. What could have turned into torment is redirected into rest. What could have produced anxiety is transformed into assurance. Establishing God's dominion means recognizing His right to rule. Dominion is not about control through force. It is about authority through ownership. When night prayers are offered, they reaffirm that the home is God's territory. Every plan formed against peace, unity, or purpose is confronted by divine authority. Darkness does not negotiate with dominion. it retreats. Confusion does not argue with order, it dissolves. Prayer enforces the reality of God's kingship in a tangible space. Angelic protection walks in harmony with divine dominion. Angels do not replace God's presence, they serve it. Their activity reflects God's will. When night prayers are consistent, the atmosphere of the home changes. There is a sense of calm that cannot be explained by circumstances. There is a safety that does not depend on locks or alarms. This protection extends beyond physical safety into spiritual preservation. Relationships are guarded, dreams are protected, purpose is defended. Night prayer also prepares the home for what is to come. It does not only address present concerns, it secures future outcomes. Prayer spoken at night enters the next day ahead of time. It clears paths. It softens challenges. It establishes favor. Angels move ahead, arranging and aligning according to God's instruction. What appears sudden during the day is often the result of quiet prayer in the night. There is a sacred continuity in night prayer. Each night builds upon the last. Each prayer strengthens the spiritual structure of the home. Over time, the home becomes a place where peace is familiar, where fear struggles to gain ground, where God's presence is recognized even by visitors. This is not achieved through volume or length of prayer. In this way, the night is transformed. It is no longer a time to endure, but a time to engage. Homes become sanctuaries. Rest becomes deeper. Peace becomes steadier. God's dominion stands firm, upheld by prayer and guarded by angels who do not sleep, who do not tire, and who remain assigned as long as God's authority is honored within those walls. In the stillness of midnight, God releases victory, restoration, and supernatural peace over his children. There is a sacred hush that settles upon the earth at midnight, a quiet so deep that even the restless seem to pause. It is within this stillness that heaven often moves most powerfully. Midnight is not crowded with noise or distraction. It is wrapped in silence, and in that silence, divine transactions take place. While many are unaware, God is not inactive. He is deliberate. He is attentive. He is releasing what his children need most. Victory at midnight does not always look dramatic. It does not always announce itself with visible signs. Sometimes it is the quiet overturning of a decision made against you. Sometimes it is the cancellation of a plan designed to delay your progress. Sometimes it is the strengthening of your spirit so that what was meant to break you instead builds you. God's victories are not limited to public displays. Many of them are secured in hidden realms before they ever manifest in the open. There are battles that rage during the day, challenges of responsibility, relationships, finances, health, and purpose. These battles can exhaust the mind and weary the heart, yet midnight becomes a divine checkpoint. It is as though God reviews the day, gathers the fragments of strain and disappointment, and begins to rewrite the outcome. While his children sleep, he walks. He steps into situations that seemed immovable and quietly shifts them. What felt stuck begins to loosen. What seemed permanent begins to change. Restoration is also released in that sacred hour. Life has a way of draining strength through constant demands. Words spoken carelessly can wound. Delays can discourage. Failures can diminish confidence. Midnight becomes a healing ground where God restores what was depleted. He restores courage to the discouraged. He restores clarity to the confused. He restores hope to the weary. This restoration is not superficial. It reaches deep into the spirit. It touches places that no human conversation can reach. Supernatural peace accompanies this restoration. It is a peace that does not depend on resolved circumstances. It flows from the presence of God himself. In the stillness of midnight, when there are no distractions to compete for attention, that peace settles gently. It quiets racing thoughts. It calms anxious emotions. It reassures the heart that it is not alone. Even without visible answers, the soul begins to rest because it senses that God is near. Midnight peace is powerful because it is undisturbed. During the day, peace must contend with noise, pressure, and expectation. At midnight, it arrives without competition. It fills rooms. It covers beds. It lingers in the air. Children sleep more deeply. Hearts beat more steadily. Breathing becomes softer. This is not coincidence. It is the gentle evidence of divine presence at work. God's release of victory, restoration, and peace is not random. It flows from His love and faithfulness. He understands the fragility of human strength. He knows the limits of endurance. He sees the silent struggles that are never spoken aloud. Midnight becomes His chosen hour to minister without interruption. He does not wait for daylight to show kindness. He does not postpone mercy until morning. He acts in the dark to prepare His children for the light. There are mornings when people wake up feeling lighter without knowing why. There are days that unfold more smoothly than expected. There are burdens that seem less heavy than they were before. Often, these are the results of midnight interventions. God worked quietly while no one was watching. He rearranged what needed to be rearranged. He removed what needed to be removed. He strengthened what needed to be strengthened. The stillness of midnight is not empty. It is full